In the military, we like to say that wars are won by sergeants, not by officers, right?
Yeah, right.
So,
I had a lot of second lieutenants, I can tell you, and a lot of former Army captains, Marine captains who came to my classes. I tell you, they were, to be honest, totally dependent on their sergeants, particularly when they started out, because that's the people who knew what was going on. See, but if you don't know how to depend on other people, you're going to be a terrible leader.
Let's go.
welcome to Citizen. We've got a very special guest today, former CEO of Medtronic, which is one of the biggest medical device companies in the world, and current, I believe you're a current professor of management practice at Harvard Business. Is that correct?
Right. Actually, it's now executive fellow, but it's okay. Same thing. Go ahead.
Is it executive fellow like emeritus, or what is that exactly?
No, it's more like I'm not full time now.
Oh, I see. Okay. And you've also, you're a fellow of ethics at the Harvard Business School as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've been focused on leadership and values and ethics for a long time.
Well, let's get into that. So you've got a book, True North and an emerging or a emerging leader. I wonder, from your perspective, there's a lot of opportunity in the business world to do good, and there's also a lot of opportunity to do bad. And we see it on both ends. And sometimes it's not obvious if what you're doing is good or bad on the grand scheme of things. I mean, there's obvious malice and there's obvious altruism, but some of the bigger moves, like for example, Elon Musk works heavily with China and a lot of stuff because they have the source material for a lot of the stuff he needs to do what he thinks is going to be better for the future of human beings. You know what I mean? A lot of people look at that and say, hey, that's not good. Human rights abuses, blah, blah, blah in China. But there's a fine line there. And I wonder from your perspective, because you've worked with quite a few companies in tech and everything else, how do you balance that?
Very tricky, I can tell you. I think, in general, let's take Elon Musk. First of all, you have to say the guy is an absolute brilliant inventor. And what he did with Tesla coming out, none of the automobile companies have been able to match that. And SpaceX, he's done some amazing things. He's getting a little too involved in politics for my or Twitter for my pleasure. But anyway, with regard to China, yeah, they have a lot of the raw materials we need. We need to find other sources for things we need, and we need to diversify our manufacturing. The one thing we learned in COVID, Dan, is you can't put all your eggs in one basket, so to speak, and you're putting your company very much at risk if you just go to the lowest cost. And I think you're seeing a big shift, like semiconductors now. Talking to a colleague of mine who's former head of Medtronic, now chairman of Intel, they're going to bring them back to Ohio, put in $20 billion factory in Ohio. But they have to have the raw materials. Big pharma got caught up with that. And so I think companies have, frankly, been caught up in Ukraine. A lot of those materials are in Ukraine, too. And so they're in trouble. So I think you need a diversified manufacturing. And I think companies have drifted away from that over the last 30 years, just trying to go to lowest cost. You got to look at total cost. It's not just what the raw material cost is, but what's the total cost on logistics and everything else. So I think it's healthy that we're rethinking these things. And I think it'll help this country a lot if we can get back to focusing on what's really important.
Sure. I mean, a lot of folks in big business have leaned into globalism over the last couple of decades because, to expand their like the NBA, for example, trying to expand their customer base in China, and particularly in tech, using foreign labor markets and foreign resources to build their tech phones or whatever it is. There's got to be, well, let me phrase it this way. It seems like that you make such a large target at that point that it becomes easier and easier for bad actors to manipulate. Like the farther away you are from the decision-making process, you know what I mean? It kind of, to me, it seems a lot like almost like business federalism. How the United States is set up to have a certain governing dynamic federally, but every other right and responsibility is sent back to the states to decide, right? and there's a purpose for that. The purpose is to not give a centralized government too much power over too many disparate people. And globalism seems to do that quite a bit. And I'm not sure how to pull back from that. I mean, obviously, Intel's building that microprocessor plant in Ohio. But even then, is there any chance that the United States is going to start mining lithium domestically? That's probably not going to happen, right? I don't even.
I don't even know if we have any. I think that's a big issue.
I think we actually have the fifth largest deposits in the world, but
Oh, we do.
yeah,
Okay, I wasn't aware of that. Thank you for.
I don't think that there's any. I don't think we're gonna do that, right?
Yeah.
So talk to me about you from a business leader perspective. How do you decide what stuff we need to do domestically versus what stuff we need to rely on, allies or potentially not allies for?
Yeah, these are big risks, and particularly after Russia invaded Ukraine, the business people I know are very concerned about China, Taiwan, what's going to happen there. It's easier to pull out of the Russian market, to be honest, than the Chinese market because it's going to be the largest market in the world. But I think one of the issues, a lot of business leaders, Dan, is that they're not focusing on their people. They're focusing too much on numbers and sitting in their offices and holding meetings and looking at PowerPoint charts. And they really haven't done enough focus on their people. Now, Medtronic has been very successful in China, staying below the radar screen, not getting involved in Chinese politics, as have a lot of companies, but you don't put all your eggs in that basket. I think companies that have great products need to be global. If you have a pharmaceutical drug that's saving people's lives like Johnson & Johnson, you need to make it available to people. So this raises all the issues you're raising, and they're never easy. I can tell you I've confronted a lot of these issues. They're really hard. But I think that you want to, as a global company, serve people around the world. And so you got to think how you're going to do that. But again, I would encourage people not to get involved in the political issues around the world, because I think that's a losing proposition, or focus too much in any one particular market.
As far as, you're something of a leader in the business ethics community. Can you've been in business for a long time. Actually started at the Department of Defense, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
But you've been in private business for a long time as well. Can you talk to me about how, at what point earlier in your career did, like what you mentioned before, taking care of your employees and things like that? I mean, that's one example. Taking care of your employees. I guess stakeholders is how we refer to it. And each one of the stakeholders has a different perspective on what's good and what's not. And you have to address all those issues. But at what point early in your career did you kind of discover that wasn't just about ethics, but also about, productivity and profitability as well?
Well, let's go back pre-business. I had the privilege of working for the Secretary of the Navy for a year, and I remember getting out on ships and seeing the magic that was going on. They're actually, Navy captains don't like to be in the Pentagon. They want to be out with their people. And that was a great learning experience. I remember being on the carrier with 5,000 people operating. It was on its way to Vietnam in the high seas. I wasn't going to Vietnam. I was just there for a day. Just watching the high seas and how that worked as like a city all in unison. And it kind of shaped my thinking about leadership and how important it is to be out with your people. A Navy captain, the captain of the ship, they're in charge. They don't leave the deck because they're responsible. On the other hand, they're totally dependent on all their people working together. And that kind of shaped my thinking about how business organizations ought to be. But the problem is some of these companies get so big that they don't really keep that going and get leaders and give them the authority. They're depending too much on consultants, middle managers, people setting controls. And I think we need to shift, and emerging leaders are going to do this, to much more of a people-centric environment. And it seems obvious. But that's the only way. If you worry about shareholder needs, the only way you're going to generate profitability, satisfy your customers, is the people on the front lines. Think about any business any service organization you visit, whether it's a restaurant, an airline, a rental car company. Your whole experience is not with the CEO of that company, it's with the frontline people.
Right.
Do they care? Do they care about you? And if they don't care about you, I don't want to go there. You can go to the nicest restaurant in the world. I don't want to go there if they don't care about me, And so I think that's that's why we need a whole new generation of leaders, because I think a lot of the baby boomers have gotten kind of caught up with managing and not leading. And then I think, yeah, you have to bring your values and ethics into it. You have to have principles, and you have to find a way to unite people around that. This is what we stand for. We're all going to work on this together. Yeah, these are tough issues, but we're going to be together on them and have a united, an aligned sense of purpose. And that's the key to being a great leader today. You have to align people around the purpose of your organization, we just call it the mission at Medtronic, and the values. And if you can do that, you'll have a powerhouse. And then you will create shareholder value, and you can sustain it. But you look at people talking about quiet quitting, great resignation. I think these are all euphemisms. Say a lot of people, as part of COVID, and are rethinking their lives and career and say, this is how I want to spend my life. And I would encourage them, if you don't like your work, find something you do love, because life is too short.
Sure, yeah. I mean, in the military, we like to say that wars are won by sergeants, not by officers, right?
Yeah, right.
So
I had a lot of second lieutenants, I can tell you, and a lot of former Army captains, Marine captains who came to my classes. I tell you, they were, be honest, totally dependent on their sergeants, particularly when they started out, because that's the people who knew what was going on. See, but if you don't know how to depend on other people, you're going to be a terrible leader,
Sure.
And I think a lot of people said, hey, I'm the smartest guy around here. Let me tell you what to do. I saw that actually happen. When I was in Defense Department under Robert McNamara, who was Secretary of Defense. I don't think he ever went to Vietnam. They were kind of clueless about what was going on. And, how can you run a company today if you're not on the front lines? If you got a retail store, you're not walking the store floors. I was on the board of Target. The CEO used to walk 12 store floors a week. He'd just show up. He didn't come with an entourage. We're announcing it. No, he'd just show up and say, hey, what's going on here? And that's how you know what's going on in your organization. You got to be on the front lines. Today, I had to be out with, people producing our products at Medtronic, our pacemakers, defibrillators, and stents, and with the innovators and with the people doing it. And I saw 700 procedures when I was CEO of Medtronic, just gowning up, putting on the greens. I wasn't selling anyone anything, but I was learning what the problems were, what the challenges were, and how well we did.
Sure. So, from what I gather from what you're saying here is top level leadership isn't doing a great job in corporate America producing middle level leadership that's of a high quality. And that's there's a lot of issues around that. I mean, it's like you hire somebody to take over a position and you expect them to do X, Y, and Z. But one of my old first sergeants used to tell me it's not what you expect that'll happen. It's what you inspect that'll happen, right? So it's just being present sometimes. But there's also got to be some kind of formal leadership training. So in the absence of central leadership, people know what to do and have, quality checks and things like that to make sure things are going properly. How do you address that in a large company?
Well, we got way too many managers and not enough leaders. We got too many people running spreadsheets and just looking at numbers and not realizing what's the reality. You said it, be present. You have to, are you present for your people? And, honestly, if people don't think you care about them, they're not going to give you all they got. They're not going to give you their hearts. They may kind of minimally do the job, but they're not going to give you their hearts, and you're not going to get great results. But you only get that by being present, by caring about people, by being out there with them and realizing what their needs are and responding to that. So all those little things that go into it's not, it's not some fancy PowerPoint charts or consultant report or something that's going to give you the answer. You should be out there in the front line yourself. And it's not just middle management, it's top management who got away from it. Our business schools are turning out millions of managers, but not very many leaders. And, the military, they turn out that they have the best leadership schools there are, and a lot of that could be translated. A lot of it think of as command and control leadership. That's the way it was, World War II, that's the way the old line, but we learned a lot since then. And you look at the kind of leadership, it is depending on your people and inspiring them. You look at the kind of leaders we have that understand that very well. And so that's what we need to do in business is develop more emerging leaders. Because I think the baby boomers, say, are 60, are not going to change. I think you got to look to the younger leaders who understand the younger generation, what their needs are.
Sure, yeah. And it can be, it's not just about teaching people how to be managers even. It's also how you treat your employees and giving them purpose and some sense of upward mobility, right? The ability to progress within the company or use the company as a jumping off point for something else, but so, have some kind of motivation. It can be difficult to quantify something like that and the impact it has, but
Yeah.
I think there's a really good example, and it's the difference between Walmart and Target, right? So Walmart notoriously has quite a few employees that are on government assistance. It's more difficult to get promoted there. Their managers make lower salaries, so on and so forth, than Target. Target makes the average employee at Target. Hold on, let me rephrase that. So Target makes about $12,000 more per year per employee than Walmart does, and that might not sound like a lot, but when you have
It's a lot.
when you have 1 million employees, that's a lot of money. You know what I mean?
A lot of,
And that's 12,000 million. And I'll let you do the math on that. That's $12 billion. It's a lot of money. And it seems so obvious that behaving that way from a business standpoint, like Bill Foley at Fidelity Insurance, the way he ran his insurance company and provided all these employee benefits, he was one of the first guys to set up a pool of stock in the company for all the employees to have shares in and stuff like that. This all seems like really obvious stuff, right? So me as a sergeant in the infantry, that's a tough job, a thankless job, but I have to have people show up and do that job, because if they don't do it properly and with full effort, then people get hurt, So there's got to be some motivation. And for a lot of these people, the motivation isn't necessarily just monetary or incentive stuff. It's how you're treated, but also like, are you developing me as a person so I can do more stuff later? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's something that's missing in the corporate world. I've worked in the corporate world a little bit. I didn't see much of that stuff, to be honest. It was mostly
Bingo.
just what can I get out of
right
you?
on. Yeah, this is what we need a new generation of leaders doing to help people develop. My whole philosophy has been I'm going to spend as much time as I have working with people to help them reach their full potential. And so I need to understand their hopes and dreams and what they want to do and what they can do and where they can be most effective, and then help them find that right place. That's the job. Okay. It's not, we have too many middle managers, Dan, and not enough people on the front lines. And yeah, the Target example is a good one. Like I said, I served on that board for 12 years, and they've been very much oriented that way, and they continue to be. Walmart's gotten a lot better, I will say, under the current CEO.
Sure.
He's done a much better job. But, I remember when COVID hit, those are the first two organizations that put money out for their employees, but only frontline, no supervisors, no managers, no executives, no CEOs, frontline people. Put out 550 million at Walmart and 300 million Target's a little bit smaller, quite a bit smaller. But for the frontline people, we're way underpaying these people. Why shouldn't you be able to earn a great living there? And why not, create a place where they can advance into management or into leadership or whatever they want to do? And I think that's what developing leaders is all about. Those are the ones that are leading. I used to tell MBAs, don't go into strategic planning. Don't do something where you're doing PowerPoint charts. You're not going to learn how to lead there. Go run a production line, run a small sales force, get out there and do it. Run a small engineering group, whatever it is, just run a store. You don't have to run 10 stores, just run one. You'll understand. One of my students, a woman, outstanding, who was a Marine, she goes, she's going to McKinsey or PepsiCo. I said, go to PepsiCo. You know what they made her do? Make her do. She drove a truck. She had to learn what a route driver's job was like.
Right.
Why not? Yeah, that's a challenging job. She had to learn it firsthand, but she'd had a lot of experience in the Marines too, doing the same kind of thing. So I did find that a lot of people with that background became very good leaders because they put their life on the line. It's not just about some money. Business people aren't putting their life on the line. It's just about money.
Yeah.
So, but people who've done that, they understand what matters.
100%. And we have actually next Monday, a week from today, we're going to be at a charity golf tournament with Rob O'Neill, the guy that killed bin Laden. But he has a charity called Special Operators Transition Foundation. And what they do is they take members of the special operations community that are getting out of the military and partner them with either education or corporate contacts so they can get jobs in the corporate world and management positions. Now, they have a 97% hire rate. and
Wow.
85% of their people get promoted within the first year, right? So
Wow.
you can't find data like that in any other subset of people, right? And it isn't because they're necessarily extraordinary people. Oftentimes, they're just ordinary people who've done extraordinary things, and that experience you just can't account for that in regular life anywhere. It isn't an insult to anybody else. It just is what it is, right? I mean, somebody who grew up doing something obviously is going to be better at it than somebody who just figured it out. And
Yeah.
I wonder how we can take an organization like that and not just place these people in positions of management throughout the corporate world, but also glean the lessons from them and make some kind of doctrine that makes sense, that we can, maybe move back towards where you are at the business school and teach people not just how to understand business, but understand human beings and what motivates them and things like that, right?
Well, that's why I wrote the book, Dan, to
Mm-hmm.
try to get more people to do that and to rethink what it's all about. And because I think that's what you're describing is exactly what we need. And that's why I think the whole concept of leadership needs to be rethought. People, they're training the wrong things. Like I say, business school is turning out millions of managers and very few leaders. But you only learn to lead. Come on, tell me you learn how to fight a war or you learn how to lead a small organization by reading a book. No, you can read all the books on war you want, but when you get in there, that's when the rubber meets the road. You got to pick. It's the same thing true in business. And you're not putting your life on the line, but you're running a store and you get it like just in today, Puerto Rico, has a hurricane, power's out. What are you going to do? And this is where that's where you need people to step up. And here's what I find: we're going through a lot of crises right now, multiple intersecting crises. But you find out who the real leaders are. They aren't the people with the titles. They're the people that step up and put themselves out there and said, "Look, we'll get after this." I remember that horrible hurricane in Puerto Rico, and Medtronic was sending planes down there full of food. But I tell you, people really stepped up and got places up and running. Hey, we want the factory running. We lost our homes. We have to live here at the factory, but we want to work. And there's that dedication. See, that's what's missing in a lot of organizations. It's just a job. And I hear this phrase, quiet quitting. I don't get this at all. Look, if you don't like your work, quit and go find something you can do. Someone said, well, I can't afford to. Look, there's 11 million jobs out there. You figure out you only got one life to live.
Mm-hmm.
Go do what are you passionate about? What do you care about? What motivates you? And then what are the skills you have that are unique? You don't have to be a genius. I found, Dan, the leaders that fail don't fail because they aren't smart enough. I've never studied a leader who failed because he or she wasn't smart enough. They fail because they aren't grounded in their values and they aren't oriented towards how you build people. It's all about me. I want you to get me ahead. I want you to get me that promotion.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, what did Gandhi say, that if you truly want to find yourself, lose yourself in the service of others? Now that sounds like a lofty, wishy-washy goal, but that's something you can apply to everything you do in life. Because frankly, it's not about you. If you spend your life trying to accomplish goals simply for yourself, you're going to fail at everything you ever do. You may have successes along the way, but you'll never reach your true potential behaving that way. And it's because leadership is about culture, discipline, and setting the example. Nobody's going to do. People grew up with this "do what I say, not what I do" bullshit from their parents a lot, and they're tired. Once they become adults, they're like, "No, I'm not doing that anymore." People think leadership is like just giving orders or punishing the disobedient or rewarding the obedient, but that doesn't even scrape the surface of what it really is. Really, it's about there's a task or tasks to do. There's stress and pressure. Sometimes there's danger. And if people see you do it first, they'll follow you. That's what it really is. And, if your manager is just somebody who's assigning tasks and you don't see them in the trenches actually doing stuff, nobody's actually going to follow that person. They'll follow them just enough to keep their job, and that's it. Right?
Yeah. One of the guys I feature in my book is a young guy named Jonathan Lee Kelly. He has a series of kind of baked goods things. They're making baking goods for restaurants and all. He did some acquisitions. So he does his acquisition. He goes into the store first day. He's in cleaning latrines. And so why is he cleaning latrines? he's cleaning latrines. He says, look, if I'm asking you to do that, Dan, I got to do it too.
Mm.
I can't ask you to do something I wouldn't do. And I feel very strongly about that. Don't ask people to do things you wouldn't do yourself, and get out and do it. Figure out, because that's where you learn what's going on. That's why when I was at Medtronic, I saw all those procedures because I learned really what's going on. The engineers can tell me how great a product is, but hey, the doctor can't save someone's life with it. There's not much of a product. So that's where you learn what's happening, and you learn some of the chaos that's going on. But you learn about people, and so the only way you learn how to lead is by doing it. You don't learn how to lead ever sitting in an office.
Now, my buddy Andy Frisella, he owns First Form. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but they're in St. Louis. It's a workout supplement company, more or less. But that's kind of how he started his company. So they have a very large facility. It's got to be like 30,000 square feet, maybe. And I have to assume this is just their offices, by the way. And I have to assume there's at least I don't know. I think he's got like 1,000 employees or something like that. And they don't have a janitorial staff at all. Everybody's expected to clean up after themselves.
Really?
They have a very large gym inside for their athletes to come work out at. For employees can use it all they want as well. But again, for that, there's no janitorial staff. You make a mess, you clean it up. And, he walks around routinely looking for stuff that's dirty, not to catch anybody, but just to have everybody else see him cleaning it up. Because if I'm the CEO, if I'm doing it, you damn sure better be doing it as well. It's kind of setting the standard, right? If you're not willing to do that, then don't take the leadership position. You know what I mean? It's really that simple.
That's right. It is that simple. And we've lost sight of it because we've been told it's all about pleasing the stock market and buying back stock and on and on and on. And every time there was a session, the first thing we do was to cut out our leadership training, and improving our facilities and equipment. Yeah, it's all about the people. And I don't know why this is not rocket science. It's not like we have some new theories here. This is humanity.
Yeah.
This is humanity wherever you are in any walk of life,
But it's also it's not just about it's so underpaying people and underserving your employees. It never works in the long run. Never. You always run into some kind of problems. And like you said, it's not rocket science, and it's not something that's changed. Henry Ford figured this out, over 100 years ago. It doesn't benefit. It definitely wasn't just for altruism, because he wasn't a particularly altruistic man.
No, he wasn't altruistic at all.
But he did it because he knew it was critical for his business and for the American economy for people to be in good spirits and have expendable income, right? That is a well-functioning business, and it's a well-functioning economy. And the best way to do that is to pay your employees, right? And make sure that your products that you sell can be bought by your employees. That's generally the math that he worked out. And, Ford's still around. They're doing pretty good.
Well, I can say, as a leader, we are not taking care of our frontline employees. We're not just paying them enough. We're not taking care of them. And they're the ones that make the difference in every single organization. You think of any walk of life, the front line they're the ones who are going to make or break you. I can tell you, it's not the people in the C-suite. And so the people who are in the suite need to come up to that. Take Mary Bosch. She's CEO of General Motors. I'll tell you, she started on the production line at 18 years old. She didn't go to college. Then they sent her on to General Motors Institute, now called Kettering. And then 5-10 years later, they sent her to business school. But what's important for Mary, and she's one of my former students, she's a first-line person. She's out with the people. She knows the challenges they face. And so I also have a hang-up, Dan. I'm getting off your subject, but I'll come back. It's really, I think our education systems are gearing people the wrong way. There's a lot of people that are great with their hands. They can make great electricians, carpenters, computer geeks, plumbers, welders. You can make a good living doing that. Then you can have your own electrical business or electrical supply business. But we tell them they have to get a 4-year degree. And I think we've diminished a lot of people by not really building up vocational technical education. The Germans do that. They do actually a fantastic job. Why do you think a BMW is such a high quality car? Because the people there really care and they're trained. And we're not giving them the training. We're just throwing them out in sometimes we push out people and hire people that aren't trained. And we aren't doing that. We should be,
Yeah.
and it's lifelong that you learn the latest skills. And maybe you want to be a computer graphics designer. Maybe you want to be a computer. I have a guy that works with me because he knows a heck of a lot more about computers than I do. And he'll take care of all our computers and service them. He's making a good living,
Mm.
And why do we say you had to have a college degree? I think what's important is that you have a real skill that you bring to people, and then you can broaden it, and then you can, then become a teacher of other people.
Sure.
Of
Yeah.
how to do that.
I mean, we're not going to run out of a need for engineers and plumbers and electricians. That's just not. I don't. We've got to be at least 100 years away from robots doing all that stuff. So probably a good idea to invest in things like that.
When my electrical system goes out or the boiler doesn't work, I'm not calling a robot, man.
No.
I need someone that knows what they're doing. I don't understand all that stuff. That's not my area of expertise. I need somebody that's really good at it. When I want to design computer graphics for a new website, I can't do that. I need somebody that's really skilled. So those are all skills you learn. And I think this is, anyway, I got off the subject. I'm sorry about that.
No, it's fine. But I like the Germany example because they do, I don't think a lot of Americans realize this, but Germany does primary and secondary education pretty well. So it's a 3-year high school, and then it's a 3-year bachelor's degree as well. But they have trade schools and all this other stuff. And if you're a German citizen, you don't pay for any of it. And
and they sit down with you when you're like 15 and say, okay, take some tests. What do you really like to do, Dan? What do you like? What turns you on? What excites you? Well, I don't like sitting in a classroom, taking notes, listening to somebody up there lecturing. Here's what I love to do. Well, why not go do it? And if you know what you love at 15, you may love it at 55. But we need to provide paths for people up to the top. In Medtronic, we had a dual track for everyone, so you didn't have to be a manager to get ahead.
Sure. Yeah, and I don't think it really is a tangent to bring up education here because it's a huge problem in our country for a lot of different reasons. One, all the weird shit they're trying to teach people, but that's another conversation. But just the economics of secondary education in this country are frankly completely fucked. You know what I mean? Like we're saddling people who typically between the ages of 25 and 30 would be buying starter homes. Now we're saddling them with debt, and there are no more starter homes to be bought, right?
No, they're not. Oh, I tell you, it's. But yeah, tell me. Here's my philosophy: the strength of any country is built on the strength of its middle class. We've been pushing our middle class down to lower middle class, and by trying to quote cut costs. And so for a 3 decades, we are looking at employees as a cost. Employees are not a cost; they're an asset. Yes, okay, Target pays more; it's a cost. No, it's an asset. I told one company with 300,000 people, look, I know you think you have great products, and you do, and great brands, but the value of this whole company walks out the door every night when they go home.
Yep.
And don't lose sight of that. They're the ones that make a difference. If you want to have a global company, you better have a lot of great Spanish employees, a lot of great Italian employees. Yep. You just don't ship over people from here to do it. So, they have to really know the business, know the people.
Yeah, I think if, especially domestically, if you're a leader in the country, especially in business, the most patriotic thing you can do is carry your principled stance into the business and make sure that everyone is taken care of, right? That's like I tell this analogy in some of the, when I give speeches from time to time about taking care of your workforce and stuff. And for the military, there's a pretty good analogy. It's you'll let your soldier or your worker or whomever it is grind themselves into dust and have problems at home or financial problems, or they want to move on to a new position or whatever it is, and it becomes unfeasible for them. And all of these things are representative of something that needs maintenance, right? But you would never treat your weapon that way. You would never let your rifle rust or get have a broken part on it, right? Because it's very obvious that you need that thing to function properly to do your job. Well, if you're a manager, your employees better be functioning properly. Otherwise, it doesn't matter how good of a manager you are. If your employees suck, then you're done.
Yep. So, I remember going at Medtronic. I'd go down to the lunchroom, sit with a group of production workers. And, I just naive, tell me, intentionally naive.
Mm.
How's the quality doing? Oh, Mr. George, we got a real problem. The equipment doesn't work. We can't turn on quality problems. This equipment doesn't work. It's hard to get someone to come in and maintain it. We don't have enough people to do that. So, okay, that's a real problem. It's not like somebody sitting up in the office looking at quality reports saying, what, are people not care about quality? No, you got to get down. What's the root cause of the problem? Don't try to fix something until you understand the root cause of the problem. It's like Boeing 737 MAX had those two crashes. Hey, the engineers knew the problem, and but that somehow they didn't let it. It never got filtered up to the executive offices, and they just kept marching along. So, by the way, I saw the same thing in the Defense Department of Vietnam. No one knew. And heck, I got more information from my college buddies from Georgia Tech. They were second lieutenants, and about what was going on than I ever did. Looking up there. So. That's right. That was my story. But that's true, I think, in any walk of business. So let's just get out and be with the people and do it. And I know this sounds simplistic to your listeners, but I think sounds basic. But it is fundamental to building an organization. And by the way, if you're concerned about your shareholders, this is how you create long-term shareholder value, not some of this phony stuff that goes up for a while and comes back down.
Yeah, for sure. There's been quite a bit of nonsense over the past couple of years. Some of it just sucks. Some of it, I think, was some self-imposed nonsense, at least for the United States. And now we're kind of digging our way out of it. I think I don't know that we've reached the valley of this problem yet, because we're so globalized as an economy now, and we're so dependent on other people that it isn't just, well, we've got to get our economy back on track. That's how it was, maybe in the 1930s during the Great Depression. But now it's, there's a lot more going on there. How do you see the next couple of months going with this stuff? I mean,
next couple of months?
Yeah, I mean, like 6 to 12 months. Let's say that.
Wow, we have a whole series of crises hitting us right now. And it's hard to know how it's all going to play out. You got 9% inflation. You got people can't hire the people they need. I don't know any company can get the people they want. You got 11 million open jobs. You got people quitting because they don't feel like they're being well treated, or they don't love their work. And you still have what I call this post-COVID effect. It's the president said today, COVID is over. Well, I hope so, but I can tell you the post-COVID impact on people is far from over. So we're trying to understand that. So getting through this is very challenging. Today, employees have agency. I say that's a good thing. They didn't before. Hey, when I got out of school, man, just give me a job. I just need a job and I'll do what I'm told. That's not true today. People have agency. And if you don't respect them and treat them well, they'll say, I'm out of here, or, they'll let you know. And so I think that's a good thing. But things have really changed. So I think it's a little hard to see, even, you can read as much as you want about what's going on in Ukraine, but that's a huge deal in many ways that we don't fully understand. I mean, if you look, it's the breadbasket of the world in terms of wheat, produce a lot of those rare materials you start out talking about, and they have access to them, And so we'll see what happens. But that's a bigger deal than I think anyone thought. And so these things are all kind of interacting. And so this is what we need today, are people that know how to lead in a crisis. If you've never led in a little crisis, you can't lead in a big one.
Sure.
And we have too many senior people that are used to stable times. And it's not a stable time. It's very unstable. And that's where you see these leaders. You don't look for the titles. You look who's going to step up.
Yeah, we had the same issue at the beginning of the global war on terror, because most of the especially senior leadership, but most of the leadership in general had never really been in any kind of fight before. So, it's like, when in Godfather, when Michael sends, Robert Duvall's character, I can't remember his name, sends him away because he needs a wartime consigliere. It's kind of similar to that. And it's always interesting to me to see who's going to step up and do this. But I feel like there's a
Yeah.
lot of I feel like there's a lot of nihilism in the workforce now, and people that don't see any purpose or any kind of like they don't have any ownership in the system.
I don't blame people. I blame management for that.
Sure.
I think, again, we've got to get people. If you want to learn how to lead in a crisis, go lead in a crisis. That's pretty straightforward stuff. And so this nihilism workplace, because no one's out there that really understands what's going on. And we've been driving. I told you, driving the workforce down and promoting the middle managers, putting the money up there. And I think that's got to change.
Sure. I mean, why do you think there's 11 million open jobs in the United States right now?
Right.
Well,
right.
I'm asking you. I know that's part of it, but it's got to be just more than that. It's certainly not like people. Where's the money coming from for these people day to day?
Well, that's another question. We had a lot of subsidies for the last 3 years, excuse me. And but I think now they have to figure out. But I think people are saying, look, it's not just about the money. What kind of life do I want to have? And they're rethinking COVID. That's what I call the post-COVID impact. That's causing people to rethink what I want to do with my life. But also part of it's because the people, particularly business, that's where people are being hired, they haven't really understood how to motivate people. It's all about how you motivate people. And I think we've misunderstood that grossly. And certainly all the pressure for the last 30 years from the stock market has gone the wrong way on that. That you're trying to make your earnings per share and you get a big bonus by laying off 1,000 people. I think that's real bullshit. Sorry, my language, but I think we've got to, get people to know how to motivate people. I mean, to me, it's very basic.
Sure. I mean, I just don't. We transitioned from a production economy to like info and service.
Yeah.
And I think there's something about everybody working from home for so long that had a big impact on the expectation that workers have for things. I'm not entirely sure all of the worker expectations are feasible. Like there's probably going to be some leveling of the playing field at some point, but it's not unlike what happened in the late 19th, early 20th century with the labor movement and stuff like that and improved working conditions. We're just running into a new version of it now. What do you think it is, aside from just better management, like the day-to-day employee? What is it that they're looking for exactly?
I think today they want to be treated fairly. They want to feel like they're working for a purpose, and they want to think somebody cares about them. People don't leave companies; they leave bad managers who don't care about them. So I think it starts with that, and I think that's really critical. That people start to understand that's what people want. I would flip the organization chart upside down. I'd put the customers on top, and then I have the employees, the frontline employees. Like during COVID, I was sitting, a lot of us are behind Zoom screens, teaching behind a Zoom screen, meeting behind Zoom screens. Hey, guess what? 60% of the people were out there on the front lines. The stock boys, stock people at Target, or the barista at Starbucks, or the person working, like my son is a surgeon doing surgery. He's not doing that from home. These people are on the front lines. They're keeping us going. Somebody who's delivering goods to your home if you're afraid to go into the store and buy your own. These are the frontline people. They're putting their life on the line. Don't tell me that my son wasn't doing surgery on people that had COVID. I mean, that happens. And so they're the ones out there. So I think the greatest lesson we learned from COVID was the value of the frontline people. I really think it was. Now let's upgrade the compensation. Let's stop driving them down. Let's raise the compensation, pay them what they're worth. You mentioned education, school teachers. Problem in school teachers aren't very well paid, but they got all these administrators. They got way too much bureaucracy and administrators calling the shot. You'd be far better off to get rid of 60, 70% of them, pay the teachers more. That's just my philosophy.
Why is that something that happens? It happens in business as well, but I feel like anytime the government touches anything, layers of bureaucracy start to form, almost like calluses. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's very bizarre.
It's like an amoeba being attacked. It forms a layer of protection around it with bureaucracy. Sorry to be a cynic, but it's true. Let's have a review. Let's form a commission. Let's go out and study this.
But the purpose of government is to make your life easier, right? To allow you to not have to focus on focus constantly on existential threats,
Yep.
on and infrastructure primarily, right? Those two things. You want to be relatively safe, and you want to have the ability to move around and move your products around. That's
Right.
the purpose of government.
Yeah.
But certainly not how government functions. You know what I mean? And it's not just one particular political party or another. I mean, the early
No.
2000s Republicans expanded the government like faster than anybody in the history of the country. So do you see, I know you don't like to get involved in the political side too much, but do you see, like, what kind of defense do we have against the government just getting larger and larger? You talked about administrators in education. I mean, it's like, I believe teacher salaries have risen like 27% relative to inflation over the last, which is not good enough, right? It's not close to, or 27% not relative to inflation, excuse me. And it's not good enough, but administrator, like the total sum of administrator fees for universities have risen by like 2,700%, something like that, or 2,300%,
Yeah.
excuse me. So,
Yeah.
like, how do you fight against something like that?
Of course, I'm a capitalist. I would say in those fields, education and healthcare, there is no P&L. So
Mm.
no one has to really look at where you're putting your money and what results. So the easiest thing to do is to put that layer, like you were saying, form that layer of protection. And in healthcare, for instance, the number of doctors, frontline doctors, over the last 30 years has gone up 40%, which is about the size of the population. Administrators gone up 2,500%. It's interesting how close that was to the number you had, and so we're trying to create paperwork. It drives both my son and daughter-in-law are doctors, drives them nuts, all the paperwork. They're sitting on vacation going to doing their paperwork, and updating things. It's so much material, I mean, surgeons should be in the surgery suite, and it's amazing, all these layers. So yeah, I think I'm very anti-bureaucracy. And you see it in business too. So I'm just going to pick on the government. You see it in business as well.
Sure.
And I believe in capitalism, but we got to get capitalism with some boundaries around it, which is focused on the right things. And that's why I wrote the book.
Sure. Yeah. What do you see from the business perspective? How does unnecessary bureaucracy form in business? Can you give me?
Same way. It's, I'd like to get promoted, so I'm going to hire more people under me, and then we'll promote one of them under me, and then I can get promoted, and you create this. And so I was with the guy that's running the largest insurance company in the world, 150,000 employees. He said, Bill, I came here, I have 7 layers between me and the first line person in this company. He said, we have 3 now. That's right. Take it out, just do it. And then put the focus on the first line people that are doing the work, that's what you said Target did. Yeah, why not? I mean, isn't that where the action is? So whoever you consider the frontline people, I mean, they're frontline engineers, they're frontline technicians, they're nurses, they're people in all walks of life. But we have too many management theories, like I said, too many managers, and not enough people really leading that know how to lead people.
So there might be some relationship between how far away from the front line a leader or a manager is, and their ability to effectively manage that. I mean, I know the span of control, for those who don't know, is the average person can manage 3 to 5 people and no more, typically speaking. But that doesn't speak to that doesn't speak to the layers, right? I wonder if there's some, like how far from, maybe it's 3, who knows, but how far from the front line can a manager be and still be effective?
Well, I think you should be able to manage 15 to 20 people. I think you want to have flatter organizations, and that keeps you close to do the math of a large organization. Do the math, and you're going to get you a lot closer to the front line. So, and I think the farther you are, the more isolated you are. And that's a risk. And so I fought that when I was at Medtronic, just by being out there myself all the time. And had a guy working for me, he was a vice chairman. He was a bureaucracy fighter. He hated bureaucracy. He would go around and take it out. But I think you do have to do that. You have to look at how we're making life more difficult for frontline people. One of the guys interviewed with my bank book is Richard Davis, who's head of one of the most successful banks in the country. but he goes out and talks to the tellers. He finds out what's going on, and that's again, that's what they should be doing. He just shows up at a branch and talks to the tellers and sees what's happening. I know it sounds mundane, but no, just get out and do it. But you got to be there, and you can't let yourself be stifled by that. Bureaucracy wants to protect you, wants to keep you from the real world, and that's what I saw that happening. It was a great learning experience. I was in the Defense Department during Vietnam. That's everyone has got all these theories, and they don't necessarily have anything to do with reality on the ground.
Sure. Yeah, and you're not doing anybody any favors by shielding them from reality. That's, whether you're a parent of a young child or a manager of an adult human being, it's just shielding people from the reality of the world that's not a very effective strategy anywhere, to be honest.
Dan, when I came to Medtronic, I was new there, and I said, you're never going to get fired here by making a mistake, but you will get fired for covering one up. And integrity is not the absence of lying. We need to have the whole story, because once we know what the whole problem is, you get to the root cause, we can get the best people in the company, best people from outside the company if we need to solve this problem. But if we don't know what's going on, I'm not clairvoyant. I can't know what's going on. Sure. So let's not, engineers may say, that's not really a problem with the product. The doctor implanted it wrong. No. You got the whole thing wrong. If it didn't work, it didn't work. Let's just face the reality and get on with it. Say we have to recall that product.
All right, I want to pivot for a sec. So you've served on the board of the World Economic Forum USA. Can you tell me about the WF is not very popular amongst most of the people I know. Can you tell me, from your perspective, why it's a useful organization? Or if you think that, I don't know what you think.
Well, it's mostly to bring people together to focus on real issues and talk about them and talk about solutions. And I think that's important. So it provided a good forum to do that. So,
and do you have anything to say? A lot of people are super anti-globalist in the U.S. for a lot of reasons. One, because of some of the inefficiencies, having to rely on China and Taiwan, having to rely on Russia, for raw materials, for wheat and things like that. But I'm not sure that the Monroe Doctrine is a good idea either, just being isolationist, even though we were technically the hegemon of the Americas at the time. But can you maybe defend whatever level of globalism that you're comfortable with? I know that's I
am a globalist. I believe we got to find a way to work together. I'd rather trade with China than go to war.
Right.
And, and some of them I've kind of given up on, some of the leaders in the world that I don't think you can work with. So I'm not trying. But I think, we create jobs. If we do this well, we create. Medtronic, for instance, went from mostly domestic to much more global, more than half global. And I can tell you, created a heck of a lot of jobs in the United States. And most of the production was here. All the technology was held here. Maybe you call me a wimp, but I didn't want to take a risk on people copying our technology. So I kept very tight control of it. So when we set up in China, we weren't giving them any technology. Now there's pressure to do that. But I can tell you, we kept very tight control over what for us was the essential element, was the innovation and the technology. And that was the keys of the kingdom for us. And so I think you'd look at that. But no, by being global, we created a heck of a lot of good jobs, high-paying jobs, too.
Sure.
So well-paying jobs.
I think, though,
but, for a company like Medtronic, cheap wages don't work. We didn't have any factories in Mexico. We going low. It wasn't the wages, it was all about quality.
I think I agree with you, by the way, that we have to work with other countries. That seems very obvious. And there's good and bad examples. I think so. The manufacturing in China, the working conditions and wages have improved dramatically over the past 25 years because of pressure from the West. I see that as a net positive, obviously. So you could say the same thing in some regards in other places in Asia and even in the Middle East. But I think when people here are against globalism, it isn't about working with our partners. It's about allowing forces outside of the United States to have any kind of control over what happens in the United States. I think that's what people are worried about. Right. And I think that's what you were worried about, by keeping your intellectual property to yourself, right?
Absolutely. Years ago, it was the Japanese we were worried about. I went over there all the time. And of course, their wage levels went up very high. So they had to go somewhere else to produce, to China or Vietnam or Indonesia or somewhere. But, you don't do well by going to Bangladesh and having a sweatshop. Not if you're trying to produce a quality product.
Right.
You're not going to win that game. And so I don't respect people that do that. I felt at Medtronic, everyone should be well paid. We gave everyone health care. Everyone had a opportunity through Medtronic stock to build up a nest egg, call it, supplement to their retirement. We had the retirement plan too. In fact, when we had an anniversary and we gave everyone 100 shares of stock, which was worth about $7,500. They were all shocked that we did that. Now we put it in an ESOP, so they couldn't just take it out anytime they wanted and spend it, but it was building up for their retirement.
Sure.
And so when they retired, they got all that money and it built up. Of course, stock went up, so it got to be worth a lot more. But the important thing is you're taking care of your people,
right?
And everyone. And why would you want an unhealthy workforce? Why you want people to come to work sick? You want people to be healthy. You can't do your job unless you are. And so I thought that was very important to a healthcare company.
And do you feel any, as I guess did as a business leader like that works in the global market a lot, how do you take the welfare of the United States into consideration when you're doing stuff like that? Well, I mean, the United States as a whole into consideration when you're making certain deals. Does that come up in the boardroom and stuff? Like, if we make this deal, it kind of weakens our position in here or there, or do you just kind of stay away from the politics entirely?
Sure. No. We felt by creating a global company that could dominate the globe, we were helping. The companies that do that have helped the country a lot. You don't want to become too dependent. Right now, everyone's dependent on Taiwan for semiconductor. It's just a reality. Taiwan Semiconductor Company. That's not a healthy situation. And so we felt by creating a global leading company. I don't like it when, under the old management of General Motors, they lost a tremendous amount of share because they didn't produce best design, best quality that was competitive, And so that didn't make me happy. I think our companies have to be very competitive. And they can become much more competitive by the things you and I are talking about. And that's how they're going to become competitive,
Yeah. So from your position, the correct strategy for business leaders in America is to try to, dominate markets through quality and smart business moves. So other countries have to come to us for them. Yeah.
Let me tell you, the reality is, awful lot of people do business in China on bribes. Same in India. Okay. A lot of countries. Same in Russia for sure. We said, we don't do that. Look, anyone got caught anywhere close to that, even we'll take a doctor out to do this out on a boat. No. We were very clear about that. We're going to sell our technology, our service, and our reputation. And that's what we have to build up. And that there's no deviation. They said, well, we're losing contracts. I said, you get back there and sell technology to the doctors, quality of products that no one else can offer. That's what you sell. Yeah, you're going to pay more for value. Fine. It's the way it is. And I'm not trying to compete with the low-end Chinese manufacturers. I can tell you when I was CEO, and I don't think the company is today, we're going to compete on quality and service. And,
I'm not sure somebody wants a low-end, low-cost pacemaker.
No. If you had to put one in your mother, Dan, would you, take one that's 30% less? It may not work.
Yeah, for sure.
It doesn't save her life when the defibrillator needs to go off. So, yeah.
Well, this has been great. I really appreciate your time today. You're, one of the foremost business leaders over the past, 30 or 40 years in the country. You got a book out. It's doing well, I hear, just from.
Yeah, doing very well. Thank goodness. I hope a lot of young readers will read it.
Sure.
It's the emerging leader edition of True North. So that's who I'm focusing it on.
So this is almost a second edition, but geared towards younger people that are going to become the next generation of managers.
And we interviewed all new people, emerging leaders, and a lot of forerunners of how the kind of subject we're talking about. So I think you'll find a lot of people with very interesting insights.
And I assume it's everywhere you can buy books, right?
Yep. The
Yeah.
easiest way is you can get it on Amazon or Barnes and Noble, but
Sure.
any way you want to get it in
All right.
these stores.
Well, Cole, I appreciate you coming on the show today and discussing all this stuff. A lot of people are super interested about the economy, about business, about leadership and management, things like that. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience before we get out of here?
I think we've talked about it. Thank you for having me on your show. It's
Absolutely.
terrific. Thanks for all the great questions you asked.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you coming on today. Thank you for joining, and thank you all for watching. This has been Citizen.